Hello class, this is an audio PowerPoint on presentation aids or visual aids that covers information for you in your chapter. What we are going to look at in this PowerPoint are the types of presentation aids or visual aids you can use in any type of presentation. You do know that for your informative and your persuasive speech, you need to use technology. So you will be using a PowerPoint or Prezi presentation. However, if you're presenting in another class or presenting in another area, you will have a good understanding of different types of presentation aids that you can use. You will, by the end of this audio PowerPoint, determine what presentation aid you need to use, what's an effective visual aid, how you can put together a PowerPoint and Prezi presentation, in a sense, what makes good presentation PowerPoint slides, and then how do you use your presentation aid successfully. So let's get started. Okay, this first section looks at what are the types of presentation aids. So I'm going to briefly or quickly go through this section because I'm sure you're well aware of different types of visual aids you can use. First is actual items. That could be people, animals, objects. Again, you want to be considerate of the environment in which you're in, and also you want to think about the size of this object that you're using. Be sure that the example you use is directly related to your speech and that it has something to do that it complements your verbal message as well as provides a good visual aid for your audience. Models, different types of models. Again, smaller audiences, you could have some type of model to again reinforce your message. It can get your audience's attention. Again, it depends. Will this work for you, this hands-on model? Or would it be a PowerPoint slide that you show on a PowerPoint screen and you would show the model? It's your determination. Photographs. Heck yeah, you know what? Photographs are awesome to use in a speech. And the reason why we would use a photograph is because there isn't anything else out there that will depict what you are saying. So you want to, let's say you were delivering a narrative speech and you were talking about you as a child with your siblings and you have this old photograph of you and your siblings. You could use this photograph. Now the key here is you want to be sure that the photograph is in good quality. And also, and you will hear this later on in this presentation, you never want to pass things around as you are speaking. So how will you enlarge this photograph so that your whole audience can see it? Will you perhaps scan it and use it as a PowerPoint slide? Do you have some type of projector in this particular area in which you're delivering your speech that will again project your photograph? So photographs are good if that is what you definitely need, and it's the only thing that will communicate your message. Drawings, again, very similar to photographs. You can find different sketches, places. Let's say you're talking about Tibet and you are explaining their culture. I bet you most people in your audience cannot visualize exactly where is Tibet. So you know what? You would have some type of drawing or some type of geographical map that you would show your audience. So drawings work well, again, on a PowerPoint slide. You could use this type of drawing. Or if you're in a small group or at a staff meeting, maybe you would use a drawing on a flip chart. You always want to be considerate of your audience, the size of your audience, and then you can determine what's the best visual aid. Charts and tables are excellent, a good visual to show complex information. I'm going to say this now, and you'll hear it again in this presentation, that the deal with visual aids or presentation aids is that there's a 6-second rule. A 6-second rule. In other words, your audience needs to get or grasp that visual in 6 seconds. Visual aids are to complement what you are saying, not to take over your speech. So if they're not understanding this visual aid in 6 seconds, it's not a positive visual aid. It's something just to complement your verbal message. Graphs, again, are excellent sources of visual aids. Here is when you have a lot of data. And you know what? We cannot digest numbers. If you're feeding your audience a lot of information as far as a lot of data information or just numbers, you can easily put this in some type of graph, a bar graph, a line graph. Again, smaller audience, it might be a poster, a very well-prepared poster, or for a larger audience. Hey, what's a larger audience? Well, a larger audience would be like 15 people or more, right? Or even 10 people or more. A small group is usually about 8 folks. So then you would put this graph on a PowerPoint slide. Media. Okay, sometimes I have students ask me, hey, can I have this short video of this race car that I'm describing in my speech? Video works, but, and it's a but, that you don't want it to take over your information, your verbal information. So 15 seconds of this video at the most. Because again, it's just supposed to be a visual. It's supposed to help your audience understand. It's not supposed to communicate your message. So yes, you could use footage, YouTube videos, something that will then be short and to, in a sense, enhance your verbal message. Okay, so how do you determine what presentation aids you need to use? Now, again, for your next two speech, for your informative speech and your persuasive speech, you need to use PowerPoint or Prezi. And this is technology that the college has required all students to learn and understand and to present in Communication 101 class. This way, when you have to deliver a presentation in psychology class or environmental class, you know how to use this technology, or in your workplace. So how do you determine, okay, obviously you want your visual aid to grab the attention or maintain interest. If you have something very unusual, a very unusual visual aid, let's say a Picasso painting, you don't want to have that out the whole time when you're speaking. You only want to bring out the visual aid when you plan to talk about it. Okay, so think about when you will incorporate that particular visual aid if it is a hands-on type of aid when you're speaking. Reinforce understanding and promote clarity. As we know, we are a visual society. So when we see something and we hear it, wow, that's the greatest combination. So it promotes an understanding. It appeals to your audience's emotion. Your audience remembers key issues. Again, if it's some type of wording or even just some type of visual, they will help in understanding key issues. And it aids in intercultural communication because, again, perhaps the words aren't coming out so clearly, but when you see it, whoo, okay, so we have a good understanding taking place. Selecting the best type of visual aid is, again, pretty much what I've been saying. You want to think about your audience that you have. Is it a large audience? Okay, like a commencement speech? Well, you know what? You're definitely going to be using a PowerPoint for that. If it's an audience the size of, over 10, 15 people, you might want to think about a PowerPoint, or it's a very large type of poster. The key is that you want to be sure that every single person in the audience sitting in that very back row can see that visual aid. You want to think about the visual aid for you as a speaker. Okay, what are you comfortable with? What do you want to select that will communicate your message and communicate your message for your topic so that there's an understanding or a persuasion? And then lastly, for the situation, depending on to whom you're speaking to or what the situation is, you want to think about the best type of visual aid for your audience. If you're outside speaking and you're speaking to a group of about, 15 people, obviously you cannot use a PowerPoint. So you want to think about what will work, or what type of visual aid will work for me to communicate this information. Factors to consider: how to display your visual aid. Again, pretty much what we have been saying, the size of the audience, the speech environment, what equipment is available for you when you're speaking to this particular group. Is it effective? What's the cost involved? Are you producing 4 or 5 color handouts? You need to go to Staples to get them printed, that kind of thing. How many people are you getting them printed? So perhaps maybe a PowerPoint would work better rather than going through this particular cost for the visual aid. So you think about all these dynamics when you are putting together your visual aid. How do you craft an effective visual aid? Well, you want to follow good design principles. Obviously, you want to have a keen eye and look for unity, pattern, balance, emphasis, and rhythm. So when you look at a particular slide or a visual aid, you want to be sure that it's not too busy, there's not too much color, that the information is balanced, it's clear, that the 6-second rule is following this particular visual aid. Give yourself enough time to be creative with your visual aids. This is not last minute and you plug them in. You want to be sure that you put them together. Think about where you're going to place them in your speech. And you want to be sure that they're professionally put together. So how can you use presentation software? This is what you will be doing for your 2 speeches, for your informative and your persuasive speech. How do you put together your PowerPoint slides? Okay, so key items. You want to keep key points on that PowerPoint slide. Maybe a graphic, maybe not, but it has to be very simple, just key words to support what you are saying. Perhaps maybe you would have one graphic. Let's say you're talking about an artist, a famous artist, and you want to show a photograph of that particular artist. Sure, that's when you would just have one graphic. But for the most part, key points and perhaps a graphic to complement the information. You want to think about the color you're using. You don't want bright, loud, crazy colors. You want to think about spacing. There's enough white space so that your audience can digest the information. Text. We don't want to use crazy text fonts. We want to keep it simple. Images. Think about the graphics. Sound. Only if the sound is needed and it's there for a reason to complement the visual. So, basic design rules. You see it right here with this slide. We have basic font. We have a lot of white space. We don't have a lot of crazy colors. We have a graphic. We have good spacing. So that's what you're looking for in your PowerPoint slides. And also, very, very important, never read your PowerPoint slides. Never use your PowerPoint slides as your note cards. You will click, look at the slide, and then address your audience. That's how you use your PowerPoint slide. How do you use your aids successfully? You want to be sure that they're professionally put together, that they represent who you are as a professional communicator. You want to be sure that you proofread, preview, and practice your visual aids. You want to be sure that you provide source information if it's a research-based slide. For instance, if you have a graph and it's based on data that you found in a journal, you need to cite that at the bottom of that PowerPoint slide where you found this researched information. You want to be sure your equipment's working. You want to be sure that you're all set up when you're ready to speak, that, your PowerPoint is ready to go, the sound is good. This is all part of presenting, and you'll do this before class or you'll do this before your recording, that you make sure everything's on a go when it's your turn to speak or when you're ready to record. You don't want to pass items around to the audience as you are speaking. You either pass them in the very beginning or the very end. It's very distracting when you have items being passed around. Use the touch, turn, and talk method. That's what I was talking about with the PowerPoint slide. Touch, turn, and talk. Have a good day, and thank you for listening to this PowerPoint.